So welcome to the podcast. In this podcast, we are going to talk to Dr. Jean-Leah, who is an AI expert, and we are going to discuss ethical considerations that are shaping the development and deployment of AI technologies. And in this episode, we are going to look at or explore some of the ethical issues that are seen or faced during the time of development and deployment of AI. We are going to look at the mitigation ways of how we can be able to make it fair and more equitable for everyone. Welcome, and everyone. I want to give Dr. Jean-Leah to introduce herself, and then we go straight to the question. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you for making this platform possible. You guys can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So my name is Jean, or Dr. Jean. Jean-Leah is really my name, but I just go by Jean. And, my background is I'm an engineer by training, and I've been in this AI world, for the last, 10 years, I think, before it was even AI, because my PhD work was in, computational material science, where we use algorithm to understand material properties at the very elemental scale, right? And that's useful for a lot of like drug design, new materials and things like that. And then that's how I was able to bridge the gap between, at least my research and the industry. The last 10 years, I've had an opportunity to work at various areas of AI, technology, e-commerce, performance marketing, it's been really at least interesting and eye-opening in the various aspects of ethical and responsibility AI issues that are dear to me, right? I think part of, for me, AI is, I've been quite an advocate for responsible AI, both within the industry and in various conferences that I've attended. So yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. And of course, I'm from Kenya, live in Austin, Texas.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You just talked about your advocate of responsible AI. And so I would wish you to do me one thing. First, define what AI is in your own way. Also, go ahead to talk about what is AI ethics and bias, so that people can be able to understand what the topic of today is.
Yeah, so artificial intelligence, by its definition, is the use of data, mathematic equations, and computer, to look at problems from more than one dimension, the nth dimension, right? And so AI is not new, right? I think AI has been there for since 1960s. I think there are papers that have talked about AI. What is new with AI is computational power, right? So we've been able to have more ways to computational power to be able to have those instead of solving an equation, a problem using x plus y, then you can look at things from more than one dimension. And I usually say the nth dimension. The human mind can think from up to 3 dimensions. So there are very few people you'll have them thinking in the 4th dimension, right? A lot of quantum physicists. But I think, with AI and the computational power, it has helped us start using those mathematical equations that will help make decisions. And of course, a lot of data that we're generating to bring that together in a more powerful way. I like to define AI for me as augmented intelligence, because you're augmenting human intelligence, right? And, I've stuck with that for such a long time. So AI can, and it's also because that in my various jobs or conferences, people say, well, AI will replace human beings, but AI will never replace human beings. But it just augments your decision making or your work, your productivity, whatever you do. And so, thinking about the augmentation of human, intelligence or human decision making or what have you not, there comes a responsibility that an ethical consideration with AI, right? And so, in terms of like ethics, right, there are certain principles that AI practitioners, need to think about when they're building these AI systems, because an AI system is as good as whoever builds it, right? So in terms of AI ethics, I think its definition is just the principles that govern, the responsibility of AI. And then in terms of bias is what, like unfair treatment or outcomes, of these AI systems based on, some demographics or things like that. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure, but there's been an argument that AI, like AGI, they say that AI may develop other AIs that may be able to go beyond our human intelligence. And so you talked about augmented human intelligence. So in this case, do you think that AI will never be more intelligent than us as human?
So I think its ability. So when you talk about AGI, it's the new era. We're in the new era of what AI agents, right? An AI agent, can do. I need to program an AI agent to somehow think like me, but I as a human being, I can only think about. Most human beings will think only in 2 dimensions, right? Um, there are a lot of people you want to go into 3 dimensions, but when you're building like AI agents, auto-generate AGI or what have you not, then you're able to go beyond the 3D. So at some point is building these systems or agents with your human intelligence, but then being able to look at things from so many different angles, right? And so I think it creates more intelligence than you, the human being, because you're limited to your brain or your neuron thinking is limited to like 3D, right? And then this all of a sudden these AI agents being built, they can be your research and look at things from different dimensions, right? So in essence, there are going to be a lot more intelligence that comes from this AI. But then the question is, how do you use that intelligence, right? Or even is that intelligence more needed, right? So I think it's a question of the what, what do you need it for, right? But at least I think we are in an era where things can be, you can, instead of doing research in like 1 dimension, and of course, for me, I keep saying, oh my God, I wish we had all this information when I was doing research. I probably would finish my PhD,
Yeah.
in in 3 years, right?
Yeah.
But I think there is a level of intelligence. I think human intelligence will be expanded a little bit more with these AI agents.
Okay, good. And going back to the ethical issues, so my question is to you, what are the ethical considerations that stakeholders should have or keep in mind as they as they develop and deploy these AI technologies?
Yeah, so great question. I think some of the consideration that, stakeholders, and stakeholders start from the people, the practitioners. And practitioners, for me, I call the people who build these technologies, right? Transparency and explainability. I if I am building a system and my team has only people who look like me, I'll only tend to build an AI system that somehow are within the bounds of my experience, right? As me and the people that look like me, right? And so there's not going to be someone says, oops, I think that can be taken away differently because of this context or this demographic, right? And also, in terms of explainability, that's been quite an issue, even in adoption in industry, right? Because most stakeholders are reluctant to use an AI system or product that they don't understand what it's doing or what it's saying and what have you not, right? So there has to be that element of some sort of explainability in the decision making, right? And then data, right? Data has to be, it has to start from the data, right? Data has to be very, how we collect it, how we parse it, how we curate it, right? Extremely important, because that's where transparency comes in, and that's where bias starts coming. It starts coming in from the data, right? Then it goes all the way to the algorithms and all the way to the systems that we are building. So I think transparency, explainability in how we're building these AI systems to ensure some level of accountability for our AI systems. I think that's a big concern with the different stakeholders, both I think the users and the practitioners.
Good. So I heard you mention very key important words like transparency and accountability. That I feel it's very important for everyone who are building or deploying this AI. So my question to you at this time is that what are the examples that you can give on how AI biasness biasness has manifested in real world applications? And what are the implications of this biasness?
So how has bias manifested in this the use of AI, and bias, right? Like, and bias here, I think want to define it as unfair treatment, right?
Yes.
On the outcomes. It could be facial recognition, right? Some examples are like facial recognition. I remember very early when we started doing, I think it was maybe in 2016 or 17, I don't know, early on, so there was a professor at Harvard, a Black lady, that when you Google her name, right, it comes in as this different people or
yeah, I remember that.
Yes. You remember that, right? Yeah. So, and also like when you do facial recognition for Black people, sometimes it comes in as like monkey or very dark, people that don't have good facial features, right? And so if you try to use a facial recognition and use like a monkey face, then it brings in a Black person, right? So so there's been a lot of ethical or bias issues in terms of facial recognition softwares, right? And then let's look at maybe hiring algorithms. Very early, people I think were excited when started using systems, AI systems, to go through resumes, right? And then that would create some sort of bias against like engineering or tech. If it's a woman, they probably will give them a low score, than if it's a male, right? So so those kind of algorithms probably built by just speculating a team of male that probably was not thinking beyond like, oh, women can also be in tech, right? So when you run resumes through that algorithms, then you'll have it spit out like a higher number of male and compared to the female, right? And so And the other day, I was watching the news, and they were talking about their new AI apps that will take a picture of some high school students, go through your Instagram, right, for example, and then it's high school kids, right, and then take a picture, your face, and then put like a nude body under your face and share that in college. So that's happening a lot, right? So those are some of the I think unfair treatments or outcomes that are coming out of AI in a way that can lead to bias, unfair treatment, and and things like that.
You just mentioned something very, very important in this case, because you talked about manipulation things. Right now we're living in the world that it's going to be very hard to know what is real and what is not real. And again, that is something that we are going to watch and see how it unfolds. But again, the question here is that how can we ensure that AI technologies are designed and deployed in a very fair and unbiased manner?
So that's $1 million question, because it starts with policy, right? For me, I think it starts with policy, but always policy lags behind technology or innovation. So and I know we've had this debate, in various forums or conferences that I've been part of, that so who's responsible for a system that creates unbiased or treatment or causes harm to the society? Is it the builder of the technology, or is it the person, the company is held responsible of things like that, right? So I think there's still some sort of debate around that, right? Around the aspect of the how can we mitigate this kind of bias or unfair treatment, right? In terms of practitioner, I think having diverse and representative training data, that is verified. I think some companies now, especially the healthcare system, are starting to certify the data sets, right? And so certification of the data sets follow a certain criteria so that you start mitigating all this level of biasness or ethical issues starting from the data set, right? So I think there is a new era where now companies are starting to certify those data sets based on certain criteria. Also, there is so that's from the beginning, right? The life cycle. Then you get to the algorithms, right? So an algorithm can only spit what you give it, right? So also putting a guardrail, a governance around rigorous testing before deployment, right? Human in the loop, right? I think maybe a couple or 3 years ago, there was a lot of conversation about human in the loop aspect of things. I mean, and that's why to me, always I say, it's augmented intelligence, because that human in the loop will always provide the oversight, right? How does a human provide oversight to say, hey, I think we need to go back and either test, this system, or we need to go back and recertify this training data set, right? So I think that level of the how is still evolving, and I think I like the idea of certifications of data sets based on certain criteria, and then of course the policies, right? The who's responsible, I think, is still a question mark out there.
Good. I feel that each one of us has a responsibility to play to make sure that either the deployment or development of these technologies is done in a fair and unbiased manner. So I want to ask you, what roles do you think should policymakers or regulators play in mitigating the AI and ensure that there's ethical practice?
So like I think they should create governance frameworks, right? And I think before this AI, like when you look at the hardcore engineering, when you look at civil engineering, when you look at chemical engineering, or whatever, there's a governance framework that governs the field of like civil engineering. They have principles, they have frameworks that you can go beyond that world, right? So I think policymakers as well as practitioners and of course experts have to get together and create these governance frameworks that really govern the AI system, because those systems are here to stay, right? um, and of course, applying ethical principles in every design. There is still a lot of education that needs to happen. And I think, you'll see that even from the funding aspect of it, educating, because if I educate you about the challenges or the harmfulness of a certain technology, then you pay attention. But then if I don't know, and it's a cool thing that I just enter a button and it spits out information, and I don't know what are the governance around this information that's spat out, then I'll just be happy-go-lucky with my information, right? So I think an element of education as well is needed. And I think there's a whole lot of funding around education as well. That's indicative of maybe we're headed in the right direction.
Dr. Jean, you mentioned about a governance framework, and I know among the many countries or continents that are trying to do this is the EU, European Union. I think they already have something in place to govern
Yes.
the AI deployment and development. And so there's also, just to talk about to go back to what you had said, who is doing what, right? So we also have people, other stakeholders who include policymakers, the technologists, ethicists. What do you think can be done collaboratively to address the ethical concern around these AI technologies?
Um, you know, so I think what things that these stakeholders can come together is really understand and work very closely with the people that build the systems, right? Because this whole AI stuff is new, right? And there are people who've been in this field for such a long time. I cannot just come out of the wood and say, now I want to build a governance framework for, AI, but I don't even know how the system works or what goes into building an AI, right? A lot of people think that AI is very similar to software engineering, two totally different, approaches or things of doing things, right? AI is more mathematical and computational. Software engineering is very more classical, right? So I think the stakeholders should really work with the people that build these systems to understand the challenges that that are coming out, because the practitioners do know, and they're the advocates, internal advocate for this kind of frameworks that needs to happen, right? So, but what happens usually, even in companies, is you build these frameworks and then you start saying, oh, okay, you have to use this framework, but then it doesn't apply, right? Because perhaps, AI doesn't work that way. AI is not software engineering. It's, totally two different things. Some things can be borrowed and things like that. But I think, working very closely with people that have built these systems, I think then we can build better governance frameworks.
Good. So from what I'm getting is that you just said that AI is not as similar to conventional way of writing codes or programming, It's more computational and mathematical way of doing it. And so, which means it's different. So again, we know that beyond the stakeholders and beyond the policymakers and of course regulatory bodies, there are also some cultural and societal issues that affect the AI development. So the question is, how can cultural and societal norms influence ethical consideration in AI development?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And actually, you know, in one of my, you know, when I was working, you know, at one of my companies, I don't want to mention which one it is, we were building a system that spans across different cultures, right? And trying to understand how the algorithm can pick up the culture, you know, nuances. It's quite a daunting task, right? And I can give you an example. I land in Nairobi, I order Uber, right? And you know, like I order 2, 3 Ubers and they reject you know, they reject you know, they whatever, then they cancel. Then yeah, they cancel the request, right?
Yeah.
But it's also because they're seeing I'm paying with a credit card and they want to pay cash. Okay. Right? So that very early. So when I am predicting the cancellation, you know, when I'm here in Austin, Texas, creating a system that can trying to understand or you know, the probability of a request being canceled by an Uber that is within like the Texas region, and I'm applying the same principles in Nairobi because Uber is a global company, then it's going to completely skew the decision, right? Because it's a cultural thing, right? These Uber drivers in Nairobi want to they prefer cash, while in the United States they don't even care, right? Yeah. You know, that's not even a thing, you know. And so that was you know, because the system we were building is very cultural. So understanding those cultural nuances and behavior, it's very important. In not like there's not a one size fits all, right? Yeah. And so when we're building, and I know in Kenya we have the tendency of borrowing, you know, what has been done probably in the West and just doing a cut and paste without having to understand those behavior issues that affect, you know, our cultural norms, right? And so those kind of systems start creating a situation where there is conflict, right? Or there is bias treatment because it's like, okay, you know, why? I mean, we just want to handle critical people. And that's even before I think they started introducing cash in the Uber or, you know, the M-Pesa aspect of things, right? That was very early, you know, but understanding those nuances and behavior, you know, and that's why now social scientists, you know, are extremely important. When I'm building my team of, you know, data scientists or whatever, I insist on having social scientists in my team, right? Social scientists, linguistic people, you know, because they help us understand this social behavior things that we can include in the model to be able to you know, move and really and truly, like I think that the future careers are within the behavior sciences, social sciences, psychology, and things like that, because we need to capture this culture or behavior to be able to really now extend our intelligence just beyond you know, information that we collect.
So what you are saying is that this technology that you are building, there is not, like, I would say, one fit for all. So there are many other dynamics that must be considered in the development and deployment of these technologies.
Yes.
Okay, and so that means that you talk about Uber, and then I know there's some sensitive areas that include healthcare, criminal justice, and of course finance.
Yeah.
So the question is, what are the ethical implications of using AI in such sensitive areas? So give example would be healthcare or criminal, whatever, area you want to talk about. So what would you think would be the ethical implication of using AI in those areas?
Oh yeah. I mean, of course, AI is huge, and it has a lot of guardrails because the implication of adding bias into an AI system built for healthcare can be very 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 challenging, right? Because you can have you can affect the diagnosis or the treatment, right? And there's been a lot of work done on data, right? And I can give you an example. One of my colleagues, good friend of mine, works in the healthcare. We don't have enough African data to be able to predict our Africanness, diseases, and all that stuff, right? And so some of those data is extrapolated or synthetic data and things like that, and that's why you see things like if you come to the US and you suffer from malaria, whatever, and you go to the hospital, you can be misdiagnosed, right? Because those kind of tropical illness, sometimes doesn't apply here, and probably the doctors here, the healthcare system here doesn't know that, right? And so there can be some advanced effect on diagnosis, and of course now treatment, right? When you completely rely on healthcare for AI systems for healthcare. So I still think there's, with healthcare just trending slowly, making sure the data is certified and things like that. It's quite, for me, it's quite still a place to watch in terms of how it evolves. But then it also has a huge opportunity, right? Another example I can think of is finance. And I think this is so obvious, right? And I think it's been documented quite a lot in terms of, lending, discriminatory lending. I don't know if you remember when Apple created, is it the Apple credit card or Apple card or what have you
Yes.
not? And then I don't know if it's Steve Wozniak or whatever LinkedIn person. I mean, let me not quote. Well, some guy applied and the wife applied, right? And I think the wife had a better credit than the guy. But then he ended up getting the Apple card, and she ended up being denied, right? But it's because they used an algorithms that were, gender. There was some element of like, are you male, are you female, right? So if you're female, then your score is, whatever algorithm score gives you becomes a little bit lower, right? And so I think those kind of things that can happen, discriminatory lending, and of course, criminal justice. I mean, I think that, has been documented, racial bias here in the US. And, I don't know if it's in Kenya, we can say tribal bias or whatever, but it'll be interesting to, to look at things from a Kenyan perspective in terms of like, justice, and either there's tribal bias and things like that. But I think those three places, I think that's what I can think of right now.
Okay. So you've given an example about Kenya, Africa not having enough data to either deploy or to train these AI technologies. So there's a need to also tap, because I'm looking at the statistics about Africa, and they say 9 out of 10 children in Africa do not have basic skills, including
Yes.
the technology. So in this case, what do you think can be done? Because I know, right, people talk about creating more data sets, data centers in Africa and in Kenya. So which type of data are we looking at in this case, if we don't have enough data to train these AI technologies? And again, what can be done so that we may end up having enough data that can be used for this case.
So you said what can be, I think I missed that part. Which something?
I said, so you talk about we're not having enough data, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what can be done to make sure that we have enough data that can be used to train this AI technology?
I think the first part of your question, sorry, was about skill set.
Yes.
So I really do think that we have to look at our education system, and this is quite like a daunting topic to me, because I don't understand how you can graduate from a university and don't have basic Excel, right?
Yeah.
So I have talked to or mentored a couple of people, and they just don't have basic Excel, right? So so I think it has to start from even just the society wanting a better education for themselves. So in terms of data, I think, believe it or not, the data is there. I feel like everybody goes into the pretty little AI algorithms, data science, and what have you not, right? And forget about the data, right? I was talking to a colleague of mine in Zanzibar, and Zanzibar, the capital of spices, right?
Yes.
And they wanted to create a database for spices, but they couldn't just even find, I think more than 10, like collect more than 10 like data around that. And, I say, well, two things you can do. One, you can teach people Excel, and then with this Excel, you can show them a sample on how to collect, to write out the spices, right? Because they know their spices in Swahili, and and so so that's a big challenge, but that's a challenge that has to be, we have to move away from like politicizing it, to really sitting down and saying, hey, we are lagging behind. And I know people will probably disagree with me, but and maybe also because I've been, like 30,000 feet, ahead, and I can see how far back we are, right? But I also feel like that some of the data is there, is just somebody has to do the dirty work, right? It's almost like, drilling for oil, right? Drilling for oil is not pretty, right? But everybody wants to refine it, right? Yeah, so so I think stakeholders, and probably some of us guys that have quite interest in developing the country, is sitting down and understanding what data can be useful for the country.
I like the last part of that statement, because in your statement, you say that you don't understand why someone would be going through the education system to get to the university without basic Excel skill. I mean, even me, I don't understand, but the truth is it's possible. I have a niece
Yes.
who had to go for packages training after high school, because the first time he ever had a chance to come close to anything like a computer or laptop. So it happens. And again, that ties to the last part of your statement, that we have to do something. And that's one of the reasons we have this kind of podcast, so that we can share the skill. We can discuss and talk about start a conversation, what can be done, so that people back home in Africa and Kenya, where we're coming from, get a chance to also share this part of AI technologies that are coming up. And again, it's going to affect everyone. and going to disrupt almost everything that we do in life. And we can start a conversation. I think we need to also involve the stakeholders, including the policymakers, the government, and all other people who can be part of this conversation. And so that takes me to a question that what are these ethical frameworks? Because again, I know they do exist. There must be a way to control or principles to guide how these AI are developed. So what are the ethical frameworks that exist to guide AI development, and how effective are they?
So I think in the last, maybe, I want to say, let me see, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, these frameworks have started popping out, to really guide this development of AI, so I know, like, yeah, I think the European, Commission or something like that have some sort of guidelines for trustworthy AI, right? You know, technical robustness, privacy or transparency, things like that, right? And then I think China, I don't know when, has some AI principles, right? And so I think those kind of frameworks spanning out of, like, within maybe regions, like, the European Commission, or, I think the OECD principles on AI, like adopted by 42 countries or something like that. I think I saw that the other day, and so Biden the other day, last October, signed, an executive order in terms of understanding responsible AI. And of course, there's now a lot of money and things like that going into that aspect of creating those frameworks, right? But I think we're at the inception of creating those frameworks. I haven't seen a lot of from Africa, something like that. But I feel like from Africa, my my suggestion would be an ethical AI framework that is generated from the African Union and really helps guide the African continent about these ethical frameworks that can form as a basis of building AI systems, right, in Africa, because we are too fragmented. Sorry, we're too fragmented as a continent to each have our own ethical framework if we are to at least be able to tap into this new era of AI. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think maybe we want to think about writing a paper on the frameworks, AI framework for Africa. I think this time that is done. That's done, because I think we talk about Africa and we talk about the technologies, and in most cases, Africa is either at the bottom or almost at the bottom. So I think someone need to do something, and I think we can write a paper on this AI framework, on how this AI can be the framework to be used in Africa when either developing or implementing this AI.
I'm
And
happy to collaborate.
yeah, I mean, we should think about that. Yeah, so I know we've talked about a lot of biasness and ethical concern when developing and deploying AI technologies. So I know the challenges that we encounter as we develop or deploy them. So I want, if you can, please explain some of the challenges that we find in ensuring fairness, or when we are trying to make sure that ethical concerns are addressed.
I think some of the challenges, I think one is education, right? I think if people don't understand, they push back, right? And to me, it goes like, if people do understand what is AI, how is it beneficial to society, and how can it hurt society, right? But I think it goes back. Sorry, but I think it goes back to, a lot of education, right? And then also having, this frameworks, right? Yeah.
Okay. So when talking about these challenges, which you just said, and of course, we do realize they do exist. One of the things is that we have the data to be trained. I mean, the data to be used when training this AI. Of course, cultural and societal norms. Those are the challenges, and regulatory challenges. Because, like for example, talk about EU already implementing the frameworks, regulatory frameworks, and of course, they are controlled by their rules. And when you come into US, also they have their own rules that may be different. So those challenges they do exist, but they also have long-term ethical implications. Okay, so what do you think are the long-term ethical implications, and how can we prepare for them when implementing these AI technologies?
So long-term implications of AI.
Yes.
I mean, I think the long-term implication of AI, there's a good and a bad. I mean, of course, the good is, productivity, now we can just create images and things like that, but the challenges of the bad is like how I said the other day, there's actually this apps called nudification. I was watching the news and they were talking about apps called nudification. And of course, kids in high school, I don't like you, so I take your face and nudify it, whatever that means. And then I share around and you're like, what in the world, right? And so like those kind of implications start affecting our society in a very negative way, right? And so, I for one, I think it has to come with, policy, very, good policy, because I mean, in my mind, I'm not quite sure how high school kids can be able to get access to an app called Nudification and then be able to use it freely, right? That's just like beyond my, you know, understanding. But I think putting guardrails and really sitting down, I think this new generation, we have to maybe sit down with them and really just tell them the implications of that, right?
Yeah.
That teachers in schools, like so we have to teach the teachers what is AI is and the implications, and the teachers have to teach the kids, right? And
Yeah.
so and I keep going back to education because that's where it starts, right? If I understand, stealing is bad, right? And it starts from, learning from school and learning from parents, then I think also playing that role from both parents and teachers. But then we who know that happens is we have to teach the teachers, and then the teachers have to teach the kids, and I think that build an ecosystem of people understanding, the long. So I feel like education really in people understanding the implications, and really putting guardrails on these apps, right? That. Yeah. I was just like, what you mean there's an app called Nudification and it's not one. And so how is it that Apple or, Android, can approve these apps to be downloaded or to go into their developers, framework, So I think those kind of things, to me, they take me by surprise. But I also think that, that's where policy too still comes in.
Good. So if I get right, some of the things how we can prepare for this include education, policy, mentorship, and of course guidance, especially for the younger generation. Thank you so much. And going back to your first statement when we started this podcast, you said you are a good advocate of responsible AI. I believe everyone should be able to emulate that. It's a good thing to do. I, as a person, I will try as much as possible to advocate as well for responsible AI in the world, because AI, nobody understand as much. I mean, as much we're trying to understand it, sometimes we don't even know. No one is prepared for what will come as a result of these AI technologies. And so the best we can do as we look at the good things that AI present to us, we have to be mindful of how responsible we are going to use them. We are going to look at them and develop them, and of course, implement them. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Dr. Jean-Leah. Dr. Jean-Leah, if you have any other statement or some contribution, final remarks, please do so.
No, I think my final remarks is, I mean, AI is here and it's here to stay. It's I think for those of us that have been in this field, and have gone from inception now to seeing full circle and now going into the AI agents and things like that. I think we also do have the responsibilities of helping people understand, the ethical and responsible implications of the AI, right? And so, to all my AI practitioners, please don't hesitate to be an advocate for responsible AI. And I think we have a lot of work to do as we guide either in policy, in education, in mentorship, and of course in sharing knowledge. But with that, I do thank you, Mark, for this opportunity. And I'm
Thank
looking forward to more collaborative,